Coming up on Bridge City News, the City of Lethbridge offered up an update as to how the city's been handling the COVID-19 crisis and where we go from here. The province is opening more historic sites just in time for the Father's Day weekend. And Ottawa announces that our federal parks are reopening for overnight camping. We will explain when.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. After 13 weeks, the City of Lethbridge has ended the local state of emergency, which was put in place during the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's still important for people to understand that COVID is still there. COVID hasn't gone away. The virus is still present in our community, and folks still have to maintain there's physical distancing as well as preventative measures like washing hands and touch points. The other piece that should be really important for folks, just because we've turned off the state of local emergency and the province has turned off the public health emergency, the health orders that Dr. Hinshaw and her group have put out are still in place. So all those components are still involved, and for all businesses and all people, as you start making plans for, say, weddings or any other events, you still have to comply with the health orders that were put in place.
As Mark has mentioned, the virus is still out there. So we're asking residents, even when these facilities open, to continue to comply with the public health guidelines and the regulations, maintaining physical distancing whenever possible with that 2 meters, unless, of course, you're from the same household. And those who are sick or have symptoms, so please stay away.
The city also announced when recreation facilities and amenities will be reopening. The Gyro Spray Park by the Nicholas Sharon Arena will be reopening on June 30th. The ATB Centre will be reopening on July 11th, as will the Stan Civic Pool and Rotary Spray Park. The Cor Van Ray YMCA Pool is scheduled to open in mid-July, and the Nicholas Sharon Arena is slated for an August 8th reopening date. City officials say other indoor pools will continue to be evaluated with no target date set based on current public health restrictions. The economic and industrial impacts of COVID-19 have been widespread. The Lethbridge Economic Recovery Task Force has new numbers that from a recent study would show how many industries did not feel the COVID-19 pain as many of the other municipalities. The findings from CAI Global say that Lethbridge received some of the economic pain. Unemployment has gone up 9% of the region, but is still lower than across the province, which saw a jump of up to 15%. The results say that agriculture and manufacturing should be the main priorities of focus in the Lethbridge region. Alert Lethbridge organized crime team made another big drug bust. 3 men have been arrested and more than $62,000 worth of cash and drugs were seized following a month-long investigation. Police executed search warrants at 2 West Lethbridge homes and seized methamphetamine, suspected carfentanil, cocaine, and just over $29,000 in cash. Investigators also seized a taser, 2 replica firearms, and a couple of vehicles. 29-year-old Leslie Cole, 27-year-old Brandon Boogie, and 21-year-old Anthony Jones face a wide range of charges, including drug and weapons offenses. A simple thank you card can highlight the influence police officers have on a person's life. BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with some Lethbridge kids who want to extend their gratitude to those who serve and protect us.
I know that the police stop robberies and bad people. And yeah, that's why I made the card.
9-year-old Kessler will be one of many kids making thank you cards for the Lethbridge Police Service. Aside from gratitude, Kessler wants to express something more.
There's a lot of bad people out there, and you gotta work harder.
So as a wife of a police officer, I know that they make numerous sacrifices for our community. They make sacrifices with our family. They're constantly out there missing holidays, birthdays, vacations, different things, but they do it because they know that they have a purpose in our community and they want to serve.
You know, it's good to thank your local first responders, not even just police, your EMS, your fire too, but especially in this time, thank your police because as of right now, it's a pretty hard job.
The cards will be presented to the LPS on Thursday, June 25th at 9 a.m. Everyone is welcome to be in attendance and even say a few words of encouragement.
I hope the cards just let the officers know that there's support in our community, that the kids are being taught to have respect for the police officers and to honor them for what they are doing. And I hope that the cops and the police officers just know that we care about them and we're supporting them.
For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Many high school graduates thought they were not going to get their day of celebration this year, but it turned out just in the nick of time as the province lifted some of the restrictions on public gatherings.
3, 2, 1, hooray! Yay!
Victoria Park High School held their third day of graduation in the park. They had grads arrive in 20-minute intervals, so groups did not get too large. The school says they worked closely with the health inspector to ensure social distancing and safety. In total, the school had 81 graduates in their class of 2020. They were able to celebrate 76 of them in person over the past 3 days at Henderson Lake Park.
I feel amazing. I honestly didn't think I would make it, and just a lot of struggles, but I'm so happy. I can't even express it.
I just thought we're gonna be celebrating at home, but yeah, I'm happy that we did it, even though it's just few minutes. I love to thank my teachers for being so supportive.
Congratulations going out to all of the graduates. COVID-19 has impacted our local artists. The Trianon Gallery in downtown Lethbridge is no different. The gallery's owner and a Lethbridge film production company partnered to sell paintings while helping out a charitable organization at the same time. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly has the details.
Global pandemic, decrease in local art sales. Nick Boley, owner and founder of Hat Chap Productions, wanted to help out his friends at the Trianon Art Gallery. He directed and composed a video to promote local artist Robert Bechtel.
I usually do lots of different stuff, like short films and music videos and commercials and stuff like that, but this project seemed like a very worthwhile project. I felt like it was a good move for my heart, it just felt right.
For me, art is like a mystery, and I like kind of the mystery of painting. Hopefully it will open up their imagination so they can see things differently.
Bechtel creates about a painting per day. His exhibit, Studium, has more than 200 pieces.
He's so understated. His art is so reasonably priced, and he just continues to make art at a very prolific rate.
Half of the proceeds from this exhibit will be going directly towards the Lethbridge Soup Kitchen.
So we thought we would like to both promote the show a little more and donate something back.
The more that we can create positive interactions between different facets of our community, the more that we're going to be able to grow towards something that we're proud of, that we're excited about, and that we want to share with everyone else.
If you're interested in purchasing, you'll need to set up an appointment with Trianon Gallery owner John Saville. 403-380-2787 is the number to call. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Today is National Sushi Day, and the history of sushi dates back to the early 1800s. As Micah Quinn explains, the popularity of sushi in Canada is still going strong.
Sushi has become a staple of food for many people. Michael Esquivel is the owner of Edo Japan in Lethbridge, and he says sushi didn't become popular until the 1960s in North America.
Basically, I'm pretty sure it came earlier than that, but it didn't become widely spread until about 1960. The California roll, obviously, they said it was invented in California in an LA restaurant, but another chef in BC in 1971 said that he's accredited for where he invented the modern-day California roll.
Contrary to what most people believe, sushi did not originate from Japan. Instead, it traces its roots back to China.
I know that it started off first in the Mekong River, and then it moved to China. From China, it went to Japan. And from Japan, basically modern-day sushi was somewhat invented in the 1800s during the Edo period.
Esquivel says the most popular sushi at Edo is the California roll.
A lot of people they don't like the raw fish, they don't like the raw thing, but it's very simple, it's easy to snack on. You find it pretty well everywhere, like not just from Edo, but a whole bunch of other different markets as well. But California roll is probably our number one sushi one.
For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The Alberta government announced today that more provincial historical sites will be reopening just in time for the Father's Day weekend. The Frank Slide Interpretive Centre, the Remington Carriage Museum, and the Reynolds Alberta Museum are just a few more sites opening up on Saturday. The Provincial Archives of Alberta will reopen on June 23rd. All sites will have reduced capacity limits. Beginning next week, Canadians who have campground reservations in some national parks will be allowed to pitch their tents and pull in their RVs. Federal Environment Minister Jonathan Wilkinson says starting Monday, camping will be allowed at 31 national parks, including Waterton and Banff. All national parks and historic sites were closed at the end of March to limit the spread of the coronavirus. Wilkinson says Monday's reopening of campgrounds, which includes those in the backcountry, is good news for Canadians. Premier Jason Kenney will not say whether his government will maintain Alberta's $15 per hour minimum wage. When pressed in the legislature, Kenney pointed to Alberta's high unemployment rate and blamed the former NDP government for job-killing policies. The general minimum wage increased to $15 in 2018 under the Notley government. After defeating the NDP last election, the UCP introduced a youth minimum wage of $13 per hour last June. BC Premier John Horgan and his Finance Minister Carol James are asking the public to provide feedback on how to spend $1.5 billion earmarked for the COVID-19 recovery. The province will be reaching out to British Columbians in an online survey.
Would people benefit from more skills training or retraining? Is healthcare one of your spending priorities? Is access to childcare holding you back from going back to work? Is growing the tech economy a priority that you have? Do we need to enhance relief programs? Do we need to address long-term gaps in our economy? As the Premier said, we've been working with businesses, labour, not-for-profits, sectors across the board, Indigenous leaders, and ideas are already coming in. This is an opportunity for British Columbians to tell us their ideas.
A new mobile app to help track the spread of COVID-19 is expected to launch in Ontario on July 2nd. Officials say the app will supplement the province's contact tracing strategy ahead of a potential second wave of the virus in the fall. Ontario Premier Doug Ford urged people to download the app, promising personal privacy will be protected.
We're launching our government's enhanced case management and contact tracing strategy. This strategy will help us strengthen and support contact tracing, giving us the ability to consistently and reliably track cases of COVID-19. It's absolutely critical to have this capacity as we begin to reopen more regions of our province. As part of this strategy, we're launching a new Made in Ontario app for contact tracing called COVID Alert. I want to be clear, personal privacy was our #1 priority as we work to develop this app.
The federal government is also testing the smartphone app that can alert users if they've been in close contact with somebody who's tested positive for COVID-19. Like Doug Ford, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says our privacy will be protected.
We've been working on a nationwide mobile app that will notify users if they've been exposed to COVID-19. We will soon begin testing this app in Ontario. There are already a number of other provinces, including BC, who are working with us on this, but it will be available to everyone in the coming weeks. It's one app for all Canadians, and there are over 30 million smartphones that could take this app in Canada, so we can talk about a significant portion of the Canadian population that could be protected by this app that you can download and then forget about.
Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister François-Philippe Champagne says Canada gave everything it had to land a UN Security Council seat, but in the end, we should still hold our heads high. Norway and Ireland were the eventual victors.
There are many things that go into a campaign like that. We've invested a lot of time and effort over the last 4 years. We'll have a chance to reflect what could have led to that results, and certainly the timing of certain action or decision. We will reflect on all that. But I think tonight, what I think Canadians, they should be very grateful to the men and women in our missions around the world, particularly those who have been investing so much time and effort and emotions and passion. This is the best that we have in our civil service. These people have been, you see the faces, you can see them, but I can see them, the face of people who have devoted 4 years of their life to defend Canada, to promote Canada, to talk about Canada. We should celebrate them tonight.
Prosecutors brought murder charges against the white Atlanta police officer who shot and killed Rayshard Brooks. They said he posed no threat when he was shot in the back and that the officer kicked him and offered no medical treatment as he lay dying on the ground.
So these are the charges that we have had filed today, signed by one of our Superior Court judges. These are the 11 charges against Officer Roth. The first charge is felony murder. This is the death that is as a result of a underlying felony, and in this case, the underlying felony is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and the possible sentences for a felony murder conviction would be life without parole, or the death penalty.
A new poll finds more Americans today than 5 years ago believe police brutality is a very serious problem that too often goes undisciplined and unequally targets Black Americans.
Across the United States, George Floyd's haunting final words have become a rallying cry. And they have shed new light on an issue that has historically divided much of the country, that of police brutality. A new poll by the Associated Press and NORC Center for Public Affairs Research shows about half of all Americans now say police violence against the public is a highly serious problem. That's up from about a third as recently as last September. More Americans also say the problem too often goes undisciplined and unequally targets Black Americans.
In Maryland, police dogs...
As the country grapples with confronting a long history of structural racism and inequalities, the findings are reflective of a shift in understanding.
To me, this is a 400-plus year problem that goes even back to slavery. But if people want to narrow it down to the past 5-6 years, yes. Do I think police violence is a problem? Yes.
83% of Black Americans say police violence is a very serious problem. 39% of white Americans feel the same. About 35% of white Americans call it moderately serious. The recent protests have been markedly diverse, with many white people being more vocal about police violence and racism than they have in the past.
For me as a Black person, I'm like, this has been happening. You know, we should have been on it. We should have been seeing this. And so now what's happening is, I'll be honest, more white people are saying it, just saying this is wrong.
Not a lot of need for air conditioning with the cooler temperatures and rain we had today, but that will be changing. Complete weather details are on deck. It is looking a bit like a mixed bag weather-wise over the next few days. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a look at the forecast. Jeanette, some rain and then a nice start to the weekend with lots of sunshine.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a mixed bag over the past couple days with the cooler temperatures and all the rain that we've been getting. 6 degrees is the overnight low tonight, and then we should see the skies clearing a little bit into tomorrow morning as we wake up to sunny skies, but then those clouds are going to roll in again on Friday, giving us 30% chance of showers Friday afternoon. There is a risk also of an afternoon thunderstorm tomorrow. Our high temperature, we could be seeing up to 20 degrees, and our overnight low on Friday evening, 8 degrees. And then as we roll into the weekend, we're going to start to see temperatures rise a little bit and see that sun come out for Saturday. 24 should be a lovely day on Saturday. Sunday, though, look at this. We're going to be seeing some rain, 60%. As a matter of fact, 21 is the high on Sunday. Also for Monday, except we're going to be seeing sunny skies. The sun will shine also on Tuesday and Wednesday. And look at those temperatures as we get towards midweek next week. 25 the high for Tuesday and 26 for Wednesday. That is more like it. And as we're looking at the average temps for this time of year, 23 is the average high, average low 9 degrees. The high temperature on this day was back in 1969. It was 33 degrees, and our low temperature 0 back in 2004. The sun got up this morning at 5:23 a.m., a little too early for me. And look at that, our evening sunset close to 10 p.m. already, 9:42 p.m. We will see the sun go down on our Thursday night, giving us close to, 16 and a half hours of daylight as we creep closer to that summer solstice coming up this weekend. 20 degrees is the high on the west coast. Victoria and Vancouver should see that temperature along with a mix of sun and clouds. Sunshine tomorrow in Edmonton, 21. 20 is the expected high for Calgary, and they should get weather similar to ours down here in Lethbridge with that chance of rain in the afternoon. Saskatoon and Regina should see some rain as well. 16 in Saskatoon, 17 in Regina. Winnipeg's high 20 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. They could see some rain tonight, but the sun will come out again tomorrow. Now look at these temperatures over here in central Canada. Toronto's high 29 with sunshine. Ottawa 32, 34 degrees expected in Montreal under sunny skies. This whole area Montreal, Fredericton, Charlottetown, Halifax under a heat warning. Look at these temperatures, mid-30s, 35 in Fredericton, 34 in Halifax. Now keep in mind, these temperatures are going to feel even hotter under that humidex, which is really high. 40, it's going to feel like 40 degrees in some of those areas. St. John's, Newfoundland tomorrow, look at that temperature, 12 degrees with a 40% chance of drizzle. They could see some even cooler temperatures on the coast. There you go, that is your forecast.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer says the federal deficit could balloon up to $256 billion this year due to increased spending on COVID-19 aid and a drop in economic output. Yves Giroux estimates total spending of $169 billion on emergency aid helped to offset the impact of the virus. The Budget Office estimates the economy could shrink by a historic 6.8% this year. That is the weakest showing since 1981. Wholesale sales in April fell to their lowest level in nearly 7 years as the coronavirus pandemic continued to spread throughout the economy. Stats Canada is reporting sales of $49.8 billion. Now that is down by a record 21.6% for March and worse than the 12.6% drop economists had expected. The decline was led largely by a drop in motor vehicle and auto parts sales. The federal agency says wholesale sales dropped in all 7 subsectors for the first time in nearly 12 years. The parent company of Safeway and Sobeys grocery stores says its fourth quarter profit was up around 46% as shoppers stocked up during the COVID-19 pandemic. Empire also announced it's boosting its quarterly dividend from 12 to 13 cents per share. The increase came as Empire said its profit rose to just over $180 million or 67 cents per diluted share. Sales were up nearly 13% to just over $7 billion, while same-store sales rose 15%. A survey by MasterCard says consumers are moving away from cash and opting for contact-free and digital payment services. The COVID-19 pandemic has spurred the change, and globally 7 in 10 customers say the shift to digital payments will likely be permanent. Nearly half of consumers plan to use cashless, often even after the pandemic subsides. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 51 points in the day to finish at 15,479. The Dow was down 39 points to 26,080. The S&P 500 was up close to 2 points to 3115, and the Nasdaq was up 32 points to 9943. Oil was up 88 cents to 38.84 per barrel. Natural gas was unchanged at $1.64. Gold was down 2 cents to 1722.90 an ounce. Silver was unchanged at $17.39 an ounce. Wheat is at $245 per metric ton, barley's at $246, canola's at $476, and corn is at $233 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 43 cents to 96.63, feeder cattle were down 60 cents to 133.75, and lean hogs were up 25 cents to 50.28. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 73.52 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Alberta government announced today that more provincial historical sites will be reopening just in time for the Father's Day weekend. The Frank Slide Interpretive Centre, the Remington Carriage Museum, and the Reynolds Alberta Museum are just a few more sites opening up on Saturday. The Provincial Archives of Alberta will reopen on June 23rd, and all sites will have reduced capacity limits. There are some in the medical community who believe that cannabis can have a positive effect on our health. There are also those who say that there's a very dark side to the plant, which has some nasty side effects. Jacqueline Smith, Director of Mental Health and Wellness at the University of Calgary, will have details shortly. Now that cannabis is legal in Canada, more people are using it for health reasons. How effective is it, and what are some of the health risks associated with it? Joining me now to talk about it via Skype from Calgary is Professor Jacqueline Smith, Director of Mental Health and Wellness in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. Jacqueline, welcome to BCN.
Thank you. Great to be with you today.
So what are some of the benefits of using cannabis for medical treatment? I know some people use it for pain relief. Are there other potential benefits?
Well, what I do want to say, cannabis has been around for a long time, but because it was an illegal product for so long, there was minimal research. So we are starting to do some research, but it is still in the early phase. What we do know that is cannabis now is being recommended for pain associated with palliative care. So those who are, again, palliative. Also for nausea and vomiting in relation to chemotherapy, for spasticity, for multiple sclerosis. And just recently, in the last couple years, it's now being used for treatment-resistant epilepsy in children.
Wow. I have members of my family who are seniors who like to use it for their fibromyalgia and their osteoarthritis. Your thoughts?
Well, cannabis is a very complex compound, and there's lots of different cannabinoids associated with that. So I think the research right now is very, very interesting because they're starting to isolate some of those compounds. And I have heard in research that there is an anti-inflammatory property to it. My caution is, again, this is early research, and you have to have a really critical eye when you're looking at research, because some research, they do it with small participants, number of participants. Some research is not being replicated. We're not seeing random control trials as well too. So I'm concerned there's a little bit of a panacea effect right now, and where cannabis is being recommended for everything under the sun. Now, I want to position myself as someone who sits on the fence. On a personal level, I can tell you that one of our daughters was treated for a cannabis use disorder. And, but also my father, who's passed away from cancer, used cannabis for pain control. So again, I think we have to be very cautious. I am a researcher. We did some research with students at the University of Calgary, and we do know that many young people are using cannabis, and they're saying that it's effective for their anxiety, for their depression, and for their sleep, and for their pain. And we don't deny the fact that people are experiencing positive effects, but what we're saying is that also alongside the positive is the potential for risk, because we don't know the long-term consequences of someone who's using a product over a long period that has not been thoroughly researched.
And I've heard students as well, they like to use cannabis and the cannabis oil when they're vaping and their vaping products. But let's talk more about the larger or more growing demographic, and you say it might be seniors?
Yes, we are seeing a rise in the senior population using cannabis. Again, caution, because when you look at some of the effects, the side effects of cannabis use, it can cause some coordination problems, some dizziness. So we do worry about seniors who are using cannabis and may be at risk for falls, not to insult any of their intelligence, but I think what's really important is that when you are seeing a healthcare practitioner, so we have physicians and nurse practitioners who can prescribe it. So when you're seeing them, you want to be sure that they are thorough in going over the side effects and the potential risks, the potential benefits, and looking at some of the contraindications as well for people who are wanting to use cannabis. And there are some, if there's a family history of psychoses or just substance use problems, that is a concern. And of course, very, very strong evidence with cannabis use with those who have a predisposition, again, towards psychoses or schizophrenia. That's very thorough research, and we know that people are at high risk of psychoses or schizophrenia as well if they have a family history of either of those.
So what is it in the cannabis itself, doctor, that provides pain relief? Is it the THC, the CBD?
That's a very, very good question, and one that we really emphasize now when we're educating our university students. A lot of people don't understand that cannabis is, the two main components are THC and CBD. Now, THC is a psychoactive, mind-altering substance, whereas CBD is non-intoxicating. So most of the research, I actually read a systematic review today in preparation for this interview, and it's 2020 January. And what they're saying is that most of the research now is favoring CBD as a potential substance that can help with things like we're talking about pain. There's some early research around anxiety as well, social anxiety. I did see research connected to PTSD and to sleep disorders that are associated with PTSD. So again, I'll caution, all of those studies that I just shared with you are early. So again, we have to be very careful when we're looking at the research. The ones that we talked about at the beginning for palliative pain, for spasticity, for the nausea and vomiting, and for the treatment-resistant epilepsy, solid research. But the others that we're talking about now, we have to be careful with.
When I talk to chefs about cooking, a lot of times they say, Hal, the best way to release the lycopenes in the tomatoes is when you cook them instead of eating them raw. And I thought that was interesting. Is it very similar when it comes to cannabis, that people actually smoke the cannabis as opposed to edibles to get the most bang for their buck, so to speak?
Well, that again, you're just bringing up some really great questions. So there's a difference between smoked and edible. One is the effect. So when you smoke or vape, typically you're starting to see an effect within 10 minutes that peaks at 30 minutes. With edibles, sometimes it takes up to 30 minutes to feel the high if you're using the THC, and then that sometimes takes up to 4 hours to peak. So the problem is those who are accustomed to getting that quick high from the smoked cannabis and are then trying the edible, they're, let's say as an example, they'll eat a brownie and within 10 minutes, they're waiting for that high that they normally get from something that was smoked, and they'll eat another one and another one. So that is a concern. In fact, we are seeing data out of Colorado where there's increased visits to emergency now because of intoxicating effects. So basically overdosing on cannabis, and you would see things like psychoses, increased heart rate, paranoia, definitely concerning symptoms. And again, the concern with the edibles is that now we're dealing with children, with pets, and the caution is if we're making an informed decision as adults to use it, we have to be very, very careful with our children who may be curious, or with our pets who just may eat something that fell on the floor. So
yeah, I'm wondering how dangerous that would be for, like you said, your pet or your child, a baby, a toddler, to get a hold of some of the edibles. How toxic that may actually be, how dangerous.
Well, and again, a good point. It can absolutely be dangerous. When we're talking about THC, we're talking about a psychoactive, mind-altering substance. And for pets as well, we're seeing more research where vets are seeing animals coming in with intoxication as well from cannabis products. So I think what's really important to bring out as well is that there's different concentrations of THC in different products. So they can have a level of up to 99% THC, whereas you can get as low as 4 and 5%. On average, we're looking between 30 and 40 concentration levels of THC. So it's, again, I hope what's coming across here is that you have to be a very informed consumer. You have to be very, very careful about the research. I can tell you that there's a lot of profiteering going on, and that panacea effect, there's people making a lot of money on products, topical as an example, creams for your skin, there's no strong evidence to suggest that these products are actually effective, but people are paying a lot of money for these products. Is there potential for research to prove that they're helpful? Absolutely. But my line is that I think we're flying a plane as we're building it. So we have to be very careful, and you have to know that you can trust your healthcare practitioner, again, that they're doing all the screening questions, they're giving you the risks and the benefits. There's no really standardized dosaging right now as well too. So what they're saying is you want to start low and you want to go slow. And for those who maybe are used to smoking cannabis and are switching over to the edibles, they have to realize they are not going to get the effect as immediate as they would with the inhaled. So there's so many different variables to consider, again, if you're making the decision to use.
One of the stories we had on Bridge City News last week was down in the United States, how people are using CBD oil on their pets, like their dogs. saying how it's helping with their pain and their suffering. What are your thoughts on that, using it on our pets?
I think again, in all areas of cannabis research, it's new. I do research with humans, so I just know that that's another area that we have to be very cautious with. And again, I think there's a potential for profiteering from promoting a substance that's effective when in fact it hasn't been thoroughly researched.
Some say cannabis is not addictive at all, but others say it really can be. What does the science say?
The science says there's absolutely a diagnosis for a cannabis use disorder, and it's found in the diagnostic manual of mental health disorders, and absolutely. And people, I've actually seen the comparison between coming off of cannabis as coming off cigarettes. So there is that withdrawal as well. There's definitely the tolerance as well, where people are starting with smaller concentrations and having to go higher with THC as well, toxic levels to get the benefits. So all the same symptoms of other substance use disorders, and I can definitely tell you, I'm also a clinician who has worked in the area of addiction and mental health, and I've absolutely seen cannabis use disorder amongst youth. And youth is an area that we need to be very, very cautious with, because we know that the brain continues to develop up to the age of 25, even 26. So while the brain is still developing, our youth are at a greater risk of problematic use because of their developing brain. And the research says that the earlier you start and the more frequent you use, the more risk you are of creating of cannabis use disorder or problematic cannabis use. So I think a lot of research, especially from the Canadian Centre of Substance Abuse, they're putting out a lot of literature around caution with young people. And again, we know they're using, in fact, Canadian youth are among the top youth in the world who are smoking cannabis. So we're paying particular attention right now to that.
Are there any potential problems if you consume cannabis edibles along with alcohol or maybe some medications?
Absolutely. We are definitely seeing, if you're consuming alcohol and cannabis, you can potentiate the effect of those two. We do know that we've done a lot of work around impaired driving with alcohol. We're also now having to move forward and look at impairment from cannabis use. And I think we're having to re-educate our young people, because what we do know is the fact that the government has, Health Canada has legalized cannabis. We know now that the perceived risk for young people is going down, and we're seeing a reciprocal effect with that too. So as the perceived risk goes down, use is going up. So the message to a lot of young people is, well, it's legalized, it can't be that bad. So we're really having to do the education again around the CBD, the THC, around the developing brain as well too. And what I do know that our young people are smart, and they want to know what the science is saying. So I think we need to teach our young people to make informed decisions. And I think, again, there's a lot of really good research. Canada's lower risk cannabis use guidelines. It's a harm reduction approach. But again, it's giving all the information. It's saying, if you choose to use, these are the things that you should be aware of. So again, giving people the respect and dignity to make the decision and to make it in an informed way as well.
And another thing, when we were talking about some of the long-term detriments or the effects of using cannabis, when you go to the Canada-US border and you want to enter the United States, they ask, have you ever had cannabis? Have you ever smoked pot? If you say yes, good luck getting into the United States right now. That's another danger.
It's true. It's true. I mean, Canada has legalized it federally, and you're seeing across many states in the U.S. They have legalized it in some states, but they have not across the country. So they're protecting their people. I appreciate that.
Professor Jacqueline Smith, Director of Mental Health and Wellness in the Faculty of Nursing at the University of Calgary. Thanks for your time today.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Children today are constantly using digital devices, gaming systems, computers, and cell phones. Unfortunately, this does bring with it the risk of encountering online predators. How much responsibility for their safety should we be carrying as parents and adults? To talk more about it is Charlene Dokebauer, founder of Internet Sense First and author of The Internet, Are Children in Charge? Charlene, welcome back to BCN.
Well, thank you for having me, Hal. It's great to be here.
Charlene, share a little bit about your group and how it all began for you.
The charity Internet Sense first started because we had a family member affected by the crime of child pornography at the age of 4 by neighbors. And yes, I say neighbors. We can't trust anyone anymore, it seems. And eventually she lived her life independently, got into drugs and alcohol, and then was killed by a drunk driver when she was 22. And as a network administrator, I discovered child pornography. I don't talk about the employer because I did a lot of freelancing as well. And you don't know that garbage until you see it. And once that happened, I decided to start a charity in memory of my family member and in support of all children online.
And you do some public speaking and teaching on this, and you have some teaching materials for parents as well?
Mainly my book is probably the best resource for parents, because it's very comprehensive. I do speaking. I've spoken in Iceland, Europe, India, the United States, Canada, and I go where I'm asked. And I believe that everyone needs to know about my theory of digital supervision.
Charlene, how many parents actually monitor their kids' online activities? Do we actually know what they're watching, or are we dropping the ball sometimes?
Most parents are dropping the ball all the time. I have to say, because the vulnerabilities of our children are huge now. They can be on any platform, and predators know exactly where they are. That's where they go, where their prey is. And the other big problem is that children are becoming the victimizers because of what they're seeing online. There's an epidemic of child-on-child sexual assault that I can get into in a few minutes and in a little more detail.
But getting back to the predators for just a moment here, Charlene, are a lot of, let's say, adults posing as maybe 13 or 14-year-old boys or girls online?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. 9, 10-year-old children. They can even get machines that will disguise their voice as a young child, which makes it so difficult for our children.
I hear many parents say simply, you know what, I can't keep up. My kids know a lot more about technology than I do. So if that's the case, what do you say to those parents? How do you encourage them?
Well, I encourage them to realize that I'm not pointing my finger at parents that they're not doing a good job. I'm saying that traditional parenting is still necessary, but we need to digitize our parenting. We're very busy taking our children to school, hockey games, basketball, dance classes, and then we give them the key to our router. And these children are the most independent of any generation in the history of the world. And we have to start supervising them while they're on digital devices. In my theory of digital supervision, I've written to be very user-friendly so that parents are not intimidated. We just had a summit in London, and it's called the International Summit to End Internet Child Exploitation. It was very well attended. We had people from Africa, Spain, Colombia, all over the place. One father bought my book, and he said, I can't tell you the relief I have in practicing digital supervision. I actually have a handle on what my children are doing. And I also want 6 more books. And I said, why? You want to read it 7 times? And he said, no, I want it for the parents of my children's friends so that they will be practicing digital supervision as well.
You know, Charlene, parents can't be everywhere all the time, and it's hard to keep track of what our kids are watching. Perhaps parents need to be a little more intentional. Do we need to really map out a plan, that digital plan that you were discussing?
Absolutely. One thing I mentioned in my book is that parents should draw up a contract of use with their children. And I say with them. You sit at the table together with them and say, this is the cell phone. We're docking it at 7 o'clock at night. You can pick it up at 7 o'clock in the morning. We will be going through your cell phone, looking at pictures, because the epidemic of nudes for these children is huge. They're taking pictures of themselves nude, sending them, and even though it's their body, they're producing and distributing child pornography, which then the parents own, because essentially the parents own the cell phone. And when I talk to parents about that, they say, you mean we're responsible? Yes, you are, for a minor's activities, but they cannot own a cell phone until they're 18. So therefore, it is your plan, your phone, your iPad.
Is that considered sexting then, when a lot of these kids are taking pictures of their private parts or nude photos and sending them to each other? Is that what they call
That's
sexting?
sexting. Yes, it is, Hal, and it's epidemic. I've talked to so many principals. Every time I speak in a school, a principal will whisper and say, we've had a child charged for this. And I say, no need to worry about it. It's in every school. It's in Canada, the United States, England, New Zealand. It's everywhere. And if people would start practicing digital supervision, which is user-friendly, they would know what their children are doing.
How about if we took that router and kept it in the parents' bedroom and maybe continually change the password each day?
I advise everyone to put the router in the parental bedroom for two reasons. Number one, you can turn it off at night. Someone complained about what about the electronics in the bedroom, and I say it's not going to bother you if it's turned off. And the other reason, you can turn it off, your kids can't turn it on if it's in your bedroom. But the second reason is you're telling your children you're in charge. The location of the router in a common area is not a good idea. If we're paying for it, our children need to know.
I have some parents that tell me, you know what, when you're finished your homework, then I'm going to give you access to the new password for Wi-Fi. And a lot of times the kids do their homework is that they keep changing and updating it each and every day. Now, Charlene, should we also invest in some software to block pornography sites in our homes?
There are two ways of looking at that. You can get software to block pornography, and that will wear off when the child's about 8 or 9. They can work around software very easily. For as part of digital supervision, I tell parents to make sure they have a filter between their router and the computer, the host computer. And the router can divide the internet. There's one company that calls it a bright web, so that the child will go up into the bright web and be able to go on the internet without going on sites like that. The unfortunate thing is that does not work when the child is on a cell phone or they're gaming. Gaming can cause a few more issues so that the child cannot be as easily monitored. So parents need to be aware of that and realize that humanity has to supervise humanity. We need to be around the devices. We need to review browser history. And when children realize their parents are reviewing the browser history, as a former educator, I know they'll erase it and put up the science project and the research on history. We need to start looking at the actual history, looking at what they're doing. If a child turns off a monitor, as soon as you go into a room, you go in and turn it back on. You don't let them off with that. Who is in charge? Right now, our children are in charge of the internet too often. We need to take charge and take our children back and be able to talk to them and supervise them.
I love that, absolutely. Now, what do we need to teach our kids specifically when it comes to online safety? Avoid chat rooms, for one?
Avoid chatting, avoid sending anything like a picture without the geolocator being turned off, things like that. And what I tell everyone now is that our children in many ways are being given too much ownership for decisions online. For example, a child knowing at the age of 8 whom they should speak with online is asking an awful lot of an 8-year-old. I don't know of an 8-year-old that plans dinner, let alone who they're going to talk to online. It's a tough call. And parents need to be talking to their children a lot about that. They need to be online games to see how their children are communicating online. Is your child a bully or a victim or a victimizer? Are they bullying a child into sending a nude, which is happening too much? Do you know if your child is going to commit suicide? They communicate all this online. If you're not online supporting your children and supervising, we are lacking in our parenting skills. We need to digitize.
You know what's really scary as well at the same time, Charlene, is how much information kids share with strangers as opposed to their own parents who love and care for them. Do parents need to set a firm limit on how much time kids spend on their digital devices? You mentioned something about 7 o'clock, give me your phone until maybe 7 o'clock the next morning, and as well, maybe social media sites?
Yes, now that can be difficult because even when I'm at a business meeting, I'll ask everyone to put their phones away because it's intimidating when someone's looking at a phone and you're a speaker. Try telling a child you're taking away their cell phone, which is why a contract before they even get a cell phone is so important. They're on digital devices too much. Yes, there should be limitations. And it's kind of funny, Hal, at this point that people will tell them you're only going to watch TV tonight. You can't go on the iPad. And I just sort of, that's punishment, is going on television rather than being online. There's just so much in my book about this, taking away a cell phone, what you need to look out for, what you need to look out for with a child that might be groomed by a predator. There's so much in digital supervision, but you know what, Hal? We can all do it, and we have to do it.
Charlene, is it too harsh saying kids should not have cell phones until maybe the age of 14 or 15, or waiting to have an Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, or Facebook account until they're about the same age?
It's not out of the question, but I think my words would be good luck because so many children have them. It's again, if parents are giving the cell phones, tell your children you're going to be checking everything on that cell phone. And I mean everything. You press on every icon. They will create an icon for their nudes that looks as though it's a calculator or just a beach somewhere. Do children lie? Of course they do. I've been a teacher at parent-teacher night, and parents will say, my children never lie to me. And I would look at them and say, well, I lied to my parents. In fact, my poor sainted mother, I probably still tell the odd lie. We do. We want approval from our parents. We want to get off with things that maybe we shouldn't be doing. And this is where digital supervision comes in. Don't let them lie to you about the internet. Supervise. And you mentioned TikTok. TikTok is a very scary environment because kids are doing live streaming of nudes, of dancing and things like that. And I hesitate to mention one environment because this can happen anywhere. We have Facebook, we have FaceTime, we have live streaming everywhere. And predators love to get the live streaming. They are recording it as a child is doing it, but the child thinks it's being erased. And then the predator will sell it. And then when the child might find out who's looking at my pictures today, it's just a never-ending story.
Yeah, it's a dark world we're living in right now. Now, part of the challenge is that your kids will have access to their computers and their phones during school hours, and you're at work. How do you manage that?
Well, for one thing, I advise everyone on a cell phone especially to put a keylogger on. And a keylogger will record every key that a child presses on the cell phone, as well a comprehensive one will record all the pictures. And a parent can put that on before the child even gets the phone, and every night they can have a report sent to them so that they will know exactly what the child is involved in. You can put a type of filter on cell phones. Again, the kids can get around them. They talk about this in school all the time. We get around all that. But the keylogger is a pretty good source. Looking at it is another one. I had one parent actually take her router to work every day.
Wow.
Which, because she had an extreme problem with her child.
Wow.
And it's difficult.
But you know, if the child has a data plan, who needs the router? How many parents actually take the time to sit down with their kids and have a really good heart-to-heart talk about internet safety and the potential consequences?
Very few. I've talked to people just casually about digital supervision. And one fellow said, well, I talked to my 14-year-old son last night and he told me he didn't do anything and I'm good with that. And I'm like, really? Your child is lying. There's no question. The kids are all involved in this stuff. And I looked at him, I thought, no, I don't think I need to go any further. He was just blocking it. He should be looking at the devices every day at random. Take a look. See what your kids are doing. See what pictures are on their galleries. I've interviewed kids in high school that said there are thousands of these nudes on on galleries. Are parents looking? They couldn't be, because the parents can be charged for possession of child pornography. And we had an incident in London, Ontario. A 9-year-old was sending videos over TikTok to a 35-year-old. And the FBI tipped off the police. And this is a scenario most parents would not want to have. The police came knocking at their door at 6:45, opened the door, confiscated all computer equipment, the parents and the child's, because the parents are suspect. Are they allowing this? Because there are some parents allowing this and selling these videos for their income. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Do you want to have that conversation with the police? And that's not just parents, grandparents. Are kids visiting you with your wide open networks? Are you looking at what they're doing while they're in your home? A child visiting another kid, what are they doing?
Yeah, that's incredible. Charlene Doka-Bauer, founder of Internet Sense First, thanks a lot for joining me today from Ontario.
Thank you, Hal. Thank you so much.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for watching.